Hello, welcome to Dialogue. I'm Pandong in Beijing. For the past half-century, the United States has been honing its system of community corrections, by which viable alternatives to sending offenders to prison have been introduced. The primary goal of community corrections is to reach an equal balance of control and treatment for offenders that will positively affect their behavior and lifestyle patterns, while also saving large sums of money and free up prison space for more serious criminals. China has been experimenting with a similar system for the past 13 years. So how do the two countries differ in the way they treat offenders, and what can the two learn from one another? I'm happy to be joined in the studio today by Dr. Kevin Downey, President and CEO of Crosspoint, a non-profit corporation in Texas that provides residential facilities in the rehabilitation of persons with emotional and psychological problems, and Professor Guo Weihe, Director of the Department of Social Work and Social Policy at the China University of Political Science and Law. But before we get started, let's take a look at this.
In 2003, China first launched tryouts of community correction, or serving a term outside of prison, in 6 cities and provinces, including Beijing and Shanghai. It extended the scheme to other parts of the country at the end of February 2015. Since the 2003 pilot program, a total of almost 2.5 million people have served their sentences in communities. And as of May 2015, nearly 740,000 people in China were serving sentences in community-based correction systems, according to official statistics released by the Chinese Ministry of Justice. Community correction attracted the public's attention following the abolishment of re-education through labour and labour camps at the third plenum of the CPC's 18th Central Committee held in November 2013. The re-education through labour system began in the 1950s, and from the 1980s its focus was expanded to include various forms of social deviancy. However, the system was widely criticised and had caused several highly controversial incidents in the last few years. Community correction has been regarded as a revolutionary innovation in the penal system, since it advocates that the goal of punishment should not be retribution and intimidation, but social protection through correcting criminals. Compared to imprisonment, community correction has many advantages, including saving resources, facilitating crime correction, and increasing protection for human rights. Later this year, laws on community correction will be reviewed by the National People's Congress Standing Committee, and Chinese authorities have vowed to carry out community correction in an all-round way and to upgrade its service.
So let's get the discussions started. Gentlemen, we know that community corrections is such a complicated and professional topic for very common viewers of ours. So I'd like to start this discussion with common people's perspective, and then we'll get into legal technicalities of this matter. So let's start with China, Professor Guo. According to official data, China started this practice in the year 2003, and in its 13 years practice, 1.67 million people have received this service, and of them 1 million have completed it. So how successful do you think is China's community correction service?
In general, we can say that now the experiment of the community correction is success. For example, we can use the indicator of the recidivism rate. Now, the Chinese community correction recidivism rate is very low, under the 1%. So compared to Western countries, this indicator is very, very low.
So you think it's a tremendous success?
Yeah.
What about some shortcomings?
Yeah, now our, the characteristic of Chinese community correction, it depends on the traditional administrative measure to control the offender in the community. So even though the indicator of the recidivism rate is very low, but according to the long-term success, maybe we have some uncertain the outcome. We should to evaluate the long-term outcome.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Downey, so do you think the practice of community corrections in the United States is a success? And what's the evaluation system in your country?
Well, we've made great progress in reducing recidivism. I do think that the renewed emphasis or increased emphasis on community corrections came about in large part actually just because of the cost of locking people up. But that said, we have over the last many years have worked so hard on coming up with evidence-based assessment tools and evidence-based intervention practices, and we are now moving to reduce recidivism, not as low as my good friend from China, but when we started this, the recidivism rate was about 40% of all offenders released from prison were back in prison in 36 months. But now with the help of cognitive behavioral intervention and other evidence-based practices, we're really making a difference in people staying out and being restored as citizens.
Well, Doctor, in our brief conversation before this program, you said the United States actually started this kind of practice in late 19th century. So what's the original purpose of initiating such a practice?
I think that it was started out, the first halfway house was opened in 1817 in Pennsylvania. And it was at the time a charitable a group doing this, and now it has become much more science-based. So we've developed over the years, but the emphasis has always been in helping people get accepted back into their communities where they're productive, relatively happy citizens. But now we're doing it a different way now that we've learned so much over the last 10 or 15 years about evidence-based practices.
So why China, Professor, started this kind of service in 2003? Why this particular time?
I think one reason is common or the same with Western countries to save the money of the prison system. But I think the more important point is we stress the rehabilitation of the offender back to the community or to society. I think this is the main consideration.
So how much China has learned from other countries' practices?
From the 2012, the Vice Ministry of Justice came from American and borrowed from evidence-based correction from American to China and introduced this evidence-based correction in Chinese community correction system now.
Interestingly, Doctor, Professor just mentioned the issue of saving money. So which comes first right now in the United States, saving money or rehabilitation?
I wish I could say rehabilitation, but I think that the catalyst for what we are doing is in large part saving money. The fact that it costs $30,000 a year to incarcerate a man or woman in the United States, more or less, the idea, the springboard for it was really to reduce costs. But that said, using these practices in a community setting actually reduces costs because people don't tend to go right back into prison over and over. So the two ideas fit together.
So you think, you've been doing this for many years.
Many years.
You think you're doing a business, a mission, or a social responsibility?
Yes, I think I'm doing all three.
All three. Okay, which comes first?
Well, for me, it's always been a personal goal to make a difference in helping these disenfranchised citizens who really don't have a lot of advocates. And over the years, I've seen so many myths propagated in the community about the dangers that these folks pose, when in fact, it's a small percentage of the individuals who commit crime over and over again and tend to be your violent individuals. For them, prison may not be a bad idea. Community corrections, if we can focus on those that are coming out of prison, regardless of their level of risk, but also diverting people from ever going to prison who don't need to be there.
So, Professor, is it difficult to persuade governments at different levels in China to actually practice this kind of program?
Yes, I think there are some difficulties to, introduce the professional correction measures in China, because one reason is that we have not so much professionals to participate in the community corrections. Most of our staff is administrative staff, though they have not been trained like American, such as the criminal sociology or the criminal psychology.
So what has been done to change this, short of staff, professional staff?
No, in our university, we developed a new curriculum or the program we call the Forensic Social Work Master Degree, and to train our students to become a professional. And in the future, maybe we can send more and more professionals to the community correction system.
But what about the practice level? I mean, right now, if government at a particular level is in urgent need of professional staff in community corrections, what can they do?
I think we can, train the staff in the community to give them all, in the work and give them some education.
So who provide training and who finance it?
I think the finance comes from the administrative system, but the professional expertise maybe come from the university, or maybe we can, introduce the American expertise experts to our China to give them training.
Well, Doctor, have you ever met such same problem in the United States, lack of professional staff?
Actually, I think our problem is perhaps almost the opposite, is to get community members involved who are not professionals. It's because of the not in my backyard syndrome in the United States, where they don't want community corrections in the neighborhoods. A lot of what I do is try to bring in members from the business community, from the faith community, academics, to come in and work with us, so that we all work together towards the same goals of public safety, reducing recidivism, and restoring citizenship.
Well, thank you very much for your input, gentlemen. We'll continue this discussion after a short break. You're watching Dialogue on CCTV News. We'll be back right after this. So let's continue our discussion on community corrections. Well, Doctor, you just mentioned this not in my backyard mentality. So how big role do you think culture or popular mentality plays in your operation?
I think it is absolutely fundamental, foundational to the success of a community corrections program. I think that too often people forget that these are their own citizens who are in our programs, and we have to get out and educate people and get them to not only accept what we're doing, but to embrace what we're doing. If we hope for our community correction system, our correction system, to be more effective, meaningful, and efficient, we have to have everybody coming together to do this.
So how difficult is your persuasion work?
It's a lot of personal presentations, going to churches, to community groups, to associations, to neighborhood associations. And at first, they don't want to hear me. But after they realize that these people are coming back, because 97% of everyone who goes in prison comes back, that it benefits us all. It makes our communities not only safer but stronger if we welcome people back home and help them become restored as citizens of our own community.
Right. Professor, what's the situation in China in terms of the role traditional culture plays in practicing community correction?
Okay. Yeah, I think the traditional culture of China is more, competent with community correction than Western cultures, because in the traditional society, we correct the deviant people or some other offenders in the community, in the rural community. Because in that period, we have not the formal justice system, and we, the control the society order by the community, the majority. So in our tradition, we are more easily to accept community.
Well, personally, I think the Chinese culture has a very, I would say, conservative perspective towards offenders. Just look at the discussions on death penalty in China. So traditionally, people in China believed that an eye for eye, you pay for what you did. So how can you persuade these people in community?
Yeah, I think this is a dialectic, the perspective about the community correction in the traditional cultures. On the one hand, more people can accept the deviant or the offender back to the community, but they blame them and condemn them to do the mistake or violate the law. So this is a dialectic perception about the violation in the community.
So can a community actually say no, that we don't welcome any offenders in our community? Can they do that in China?
Yeah, they can say no, but according to the community correction implementation regulations, all the community should accept the community offenders, or should have the duty to help the community offenders in the community.
What about the situation in the United States, Doctor?
Well, the communities, by and large, have bought into some myths about what it means to have community corrections in their neighborhood or in their community. They are under the mistaken impression that individuals, when they come back and live in a neighborhood embedded facility, that the crime rate will go up, property values will go down, and there will be no more development of business around it. All of these things have been proven false. And one of the ways that we try to get at that is to show them where we've had successes in other places, and then engage in a number of community events with our residents. We open our houses and let them come through for open houses, for restoration lunches, and we go out and do community service activities where the neighbors see us and they start to believe, oh, they really are more like us than we thought.
Do you think after so many years of practice, the United States is still facing a problem of public awareness and maybe public acceptance to this kind of practice?
Absolutely. There are communities that have bought into it better than others. When there are instances where violence occurs, then it re-engages people to be fearful. I think, though, that in our organization, having been in the community for 50 years, they're used to us. They trust that we're going to provide professional services and that we're looking after their best interests as well.
So, Professor, how much effort has the Chinese government put into public awareness campaign for community corrections?
Yeah, in China, when we put the offender in the community to accept the correction measurement, actually, we require them to do some forced labor and or some other community service as their duty. And in another hand, we mobilize the community resources to support them and to give them assistance, help them to change their behavior, their perception, and to build a harmonious relationship with their neighbors.
So let's talk about the role of the government in the practice of community corrections. I noticed that in Shanghai, the municipal government there actually buys services from particular social groups. But in Beijing, it's much more like a government-driven program. Do we have a national standard for the practice?
Yeah, actually, this is a dispute area about the practice model. And in Shanghai, they introduced 3 different social service organizations to help them to do community correction. But in Beijing, we depend on the government system to do this work.
So which one do you think is better?
Yeah. In Beijing, I think maybe as the capital, the function, we more concerned about the safety of the capital. So we depend on the government system to control the offender in the community and prevent them to recidivate them. But in Shanghai, they are more open than Beijing. So they introduced the social organization to participate in the community correction system and help the government to do some work.
So do you think there eventually will be a national guideline or standard for this kind of practice?
Yeah, I think in the future maybe we can balance the administrative system with the social organization and to mobilize these two paths to make the cooperation with each other to do the community correction. For the government, yes, we should emphasize the authority of the community correction. No matter the community correction is the implementation of the penal system. And another hand, community correction is different from the traditional penal system. It will introduce the professional expertise and as Kevin said, the science-based or evidence-based practice models to do the community correction. So in the future, we should introduce more professional and social organization to participate in the community correction system.
Doctor, you're based in San Antonio in Texas. So from your experience, what's the role government plays in your daily operation?
Well, the government at various levels, whether it's the federal, the state, or the county, actually plays a little different roles. But one of the things that I think is important that they insist upon as a funder is that we adhere to certain standards around how we do risk assessment, how we do treatment, how we do our accountability procedures, the safety, the hygiene of the facilities. But then there's organizations, associations that actually help do this. The International Community Corrections Association gives us an opportunity to learn these things, to put them into practice. And then organizations such as the American Correctional Association, they actually come in and accredit your organization. If you cannot pass accreditation, the government will not give you a contract.
So let's talk about different forms of community corrections in the United States, right? Because I noticed there's a kind of boot camps in the United States which put an emphasis on manual labor as well. Tell us more about that.
Well, the boot camps are something that has fallen into disfavor almost everywhere. Because I was going to say that part of the boot camps, they thought that very rigid adherence to working hard and following orders immediately would cause them to be better citizens when they got out. And actually, recidivism, Dr. Latessa from the University of Cincinnati did studies, and people who are boot campers, actually recidivism went up. And we've also seen studies where gangs would go and recruit people from boot camps because they were very physically fit, and
they have a skill, maybe.
They have and plus they're emotionally prepared to follow orders without question. So it was counterproductive on a number of levels. I don't know how many boot camps still exist.
So you think the future direction of community corrections will be more leaned to a soft approach?
I wouldn't call it a soft approach. I would call it a graduated approach, where liberties, when a person first gets out of prison or is first diverted, are very, very limited, where they get out much more accountability, much more drug testing, very little freedom of movement. But it's a graduated system where they get more and more freedom. Because what we really need to do is move people from this formal institutional control to informal social control, because sooner or later they're just going to be living next to us, and the people that'll have control over them are going to be their wife and their pastor and their employer. So we have to move them in that direction. I think anything that we do that's different than that is hurting us in the long run.
So, gentlemen, when we talk about community corrections, eventually it will lead to the talking of the prison system. Do you think the two will actually develop in parallel, or they will intertwine, or maybe outgrow one another in the near future, Professor?
Yes, I think maybe we should keep the balance between the prison system and community correction system. But in the short future, in China, maybe we should develop the community correction system because this is the short blank.
What about you, Doctor?
Well, we tried incarcerating everybody in the United States. Pew Charitable Trust did research and found that, they looked at it. We had 1.6 million citizens right now in state and federal prisons, and another 4.8 million on probation and parole. So if you look at the numbers, that means 1 in every 100 adult males in America is behind bars today, and 1 in every 35 is under correctional supervision. This doesn't make a lot of sense for us. So what I hope happens is that we begin to realize, even if it's money that drives us to economic decisions, that we start using prison really for those individuals that we have to defend ourselves against, that we put them in there and use community corrections for really almost all of the folks that we can, which is the vast majority, perhaps 70%, actually I think would do better in community correction than going to prison.
Well, Professor, the United States has been doing this for quite a long time, but China is still at its early stages of the practice of community corrections. Paint us a big picture of its development in the near future.
I think, yeah, we should learn much from American community correction system to help China community correction develop more smoothly and more, effectively. One is we should learn from them evidence-based correction method and introduce more, the rehabilitative and effective method to do the community correction in Chinese community system. I think, this is the most important thing we should learn in the now time. And maybe in the future, and we can, communicate with the American system to learn with each other. And in China we have our advantage from our, the tradition and from our community system, and we have more advantage in mobilizing the community people to participate, to support the offender in the community.
Well, Doctor, what do you think is the near future, the big picture for community corrections globally?
Well, I think that what we're doing here today makes a difference. The fact that I got to meet with Dr. Gao earlier and learn about China. And in 2010, at our International Community Corrections Association meeting in the United States, we had the deputy director of the Justice Research Institute come, and he was our closing speaker. That opened doors. We got to learn a little bit about China, and as a result, I got an intern, a master's degree student from Shanghai University who came and studied under us. I think globally, we just have to open dialogue such as this and in other ways so that we can all learn from each other's, not only our successes, but our failures.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your input. And that's it for this edition of Dialogue on CCTV News. I'm Pan Dong in Beijing. Bye-bye.